So, first things first, Brent, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Very good to hear.
I have no complaints.
So, before we get into the record and kind of what you're doing now, I'd like to jump back to the beginning quickly. Do you remember the first album you ever owned?
The first album I ever owned? Well, that I bought myself, or just the first album I ever had?
Whichever sticks out more to you.
I remember the first album that I bought. It was actually a cassette, okay. And it was Mötley Crüe's Girls, Girls, Girls. Okay. And it was the first time I went into a record store. The name of the store was called Record Bar. It was just in, they were everywhere in different malls all over the US, but I was like 12 years old. And I remember going in, and this was before the stickers with explicit content, parental advisory, all that. But I remember walking in and getting that album, and it was kind of the first time that I felt like I was doing something dangerous. I kind of felt like I was breaking the law. It was pretty cool.
I can imagine with that album in particular, at that time, being 12 years old. So what did your parents think of the record?
Well, my parents never knew I had it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. My parents never knew about that.
But so what did that album do for you? Why did you pick this particular album?
I picked it because I had actually heard of the band, but I had never heard any of the music. And at the time, this was probably, they hadn't released Dr. Feelgood yet. So just knowing the name of the band and kind of hearing that it was really intense and quite, wild, right. Which ultimately, got me to why I purchased that particular record, which was I heard that they were like this wild group of guys, and I remember listening to The Wild Side for the first time, and I just never experienced that kind of sound, let alone the language, right. Because the lyrics, I just never heard those kind of stories put into a song, and it was just incredible, And then that defiance and that aggression and it was a bit archaic, but that anarchy too was very attractive to a 12-year-old boy who was kind of trying to figure himself out, So it was. It felt like a very real piece of art to me. I still dig that record.
Was it around this time that you discovered what music could do for you as a creator in a way?
Yeah, I mean, the thing was for me, when I was 10 years old, I kind of figured out exactly what I wanted to do. So I feel very, very fortunate. I didn't really search to ask myself like what I wanted to do for a living or how I saw my life. I kind of noticed at 10 years old that I could write down what I thought and I could put it in a song form. And then right about the time I was approaching probably like 14, 15 years old, that's when I really started to notice that maybe I want to sing, I kind of think back to that era too, because I had a lot of really, really great teachers kind of teach me how to sing with these albums. I remember being 14 years old, my parents would go out they would always go out on Friday nights because that was kind of their date night. And the garage and the house that we lived in, it had a really, really good reverb. And I remember singing Appetite for Destruction from Guns N' Roses back to back till I just would do it and do it and do it till I could hit every note. There were a lot of key moments, but I got to give some credit to my father, because when I was 15, my dad gave me a tape, an anthology tape of a guy named Otis Redding, and that opened up this completely different door, because Otis Redding got me to Nina Simone, and Nina Simone got me to Ella Fitzgerald, which got me to Billie Holiday, which got me to Marvin Gaye, which got me to Sam Cooke, which got me to Percy Sledge. So this whole world of R&B and Motown kind of opened up, and I went backwards a little bit from that. I found out about this band from Birmingham named Black Sabbath. And then I kind of figured out about Led Zeppelin. I was 24 years old before I ever listened to a Beatles record. The first Beatles record I ever listened to front to back was the White Album, but I was 24 before I heard it.
So at that point, I assume you, by that age, you had developed musically quite far already.
I think that I just didn't, I've always looked at rock and roll as a way of life. I don't really look at it as a genre of music. It's a bit more of a spirit, I think, in a lot of ways. That community from, ever since I can remember, were always very, very welcoming. Didn't matter what color skin you had, didn't matter your religion, didn't matter how young or old you were, didn't matter if you were a man or a woman. Everybody was welcomed. But I've never pigeonholed myself either from a musical standpoint. But I'm very, very centered in regards to music. There's a difference with me in songs and music. So when I think of songs, I think about all the dynamics that make the melody and make the musicianship. So that attributes to not only the playing, but also the lyrical content and the melody. So my palette is pretty wide, pretty broad. Like I don't subscribe to just one style of music. I listen to a lot of different styles.
When did you, what you just now mentioned, when did you figure that out, so to say? So when did you write a song where the melodies, where everything kind of came together, and what you created you were proud of? Was it early on? Was it?
I think the very, very first time that I wrote a song and then actually got it recorded, oddly enough, I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, in the United States, and there was a gentleman there that was kind of known locally. His name was Travis Wyrick. He still works today, and he's actually a really, really great producer and quite a good engineer. But I had like these 3 acoustic songs, and I had written. It was like the first time that I tried to like actually write, an actual composition with music and melody and lyrics. And he said, well, just come in. I was probably 16 at this time. He was like, well, just come in on the weekend. I was like, I don't really have any money. And he was like, I'm not gonna charge you. We'll just see what you throw down. So I did 3 songs with him. The interesting thing is that when I fast forward from that, one of those songs was Save Me, which became from the second album, which we called Us and Them. That was the first single from that record, and that song went on to be, it was a #1 rock song, but it was also our very, very first #1 at alternative radio. So it's interesting, how 16 years old, moving forward to, 26, 27, and being in the studio trying to come up with songs for the second album and nobody really having anything, and me going, they've never heard this, I'm gonna just see what happens. So
that process of getting your thoughts and your imagination in terms of music onto paper and then kind of getting it out there in the world.
Yeah.
What did that do for you? And kind of throughout your whole career? Well, because I can imagine that must be kind of surreal, like you say. You write a song when you're quite young and then it becomes a success 10, 20 years later.
I think that for me, I really want people, in anything that you do, whether it's creative or whether it's something that you believe in. If you believe in it, then you need to do it. If you believe in it, then you should learn more about whatever it is. And do not, under any circumstances whatsoever, think that you have arrived at any point in time. You can always learn something else. You can always figure out how to do something better. And you also have to kind of learn to adapt. I'm only speaking personally for me in the industry that I'm in, because yes, I'm considered a professional musician and singer, performer, songwriter. But the fact is it's called the music business for a reason. Right. It's a business. So for me, I think for the art of what I do, which means the most to me, I had a lot of really great teachers that helped me understand that it is a business, and there are fundamental situations that are going to be presented to you that you're going to have to make decisions on. So you need to be educated by that. The reason I'm saying that is, had I never met Bill McGathy, who is our manager and who runs McGathy Promotions and Indigood Entertainment, I don't think that I would be, or the band for that matter, would be where we are today without him. I remember one of the very instrumental things 20 years ago when I met him that he told me when he decided to manage the band was, no matter what, keep your eyes and your ears open at all times and keep your mouth shut until you know exactly what you're talking about and exactly how you're going to say it. So he taught me a lot of patience and really being able to collect, for lack of a better way, collect the data around you before you figured out how you felt about something. Make sure you agreed with your own opinion and then presented it to all the people in front of you. Because there's a lot more that goes into it than just, you know, getting on stage, playing for an hour and a half or 30 minutes or 2.5 hours, and then moving on to the next, into the next city. For me personally, I'm only as good as the people I surround myself with, and I've been very, very lucky that I've surrounded myself, and to this day continue to surround myself with really extraordinary individuals.
Well, that's an interesting point, because I wanted to ask you about kind of the sustained success of the band, because pretty much every single you release will be top 5 in the rock charts.
Knock on wood.
but what you just mentioned, surrounding yourself with good people, is that part of kind of what keeps that consistency there?
100%, absolutely. You'll never be able to do it on your own. And that's not me being like self-defeatist. That's actually the complete opposite. That's being very aware of your surroundings and the industry that you're in. You have to understand something too. We don't stay in one place very long. We move a lot. I've always said that I have a gypsy heart. You know, my mother and my father have always found me to be quite interesting from the rest of the family, because I'm quite the opposite of everyone else. Not in a bad way, it's just I need to move and I need to experience the world. And I'm not going to backtrack from what I'm about to say. I feel like what I have to say, a lot of people feel the same way. Maybe they don't have a sounding board, and I feel like I was put here to be that vessel. I feel like in a lot of ways that I think what I have to say is necessary, because it's not just my opinion. I think I take a collective before I ever present myself and or the band. We're representing a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings that a lot of people have, sometimes to where they may be terrified to actually express it, whereas I'm not. And I have no problems being very, very real and very upfront. In the same breath, I don't think people should censor themselves. I think you should say how you feel. I think, once again, going back to what I said, keep your eyes and your ears open, and before you say anything, just make sure when you get ready to voice your opinion, make sure you 100% believe what you're about to say.